He never planned to be there. If someone had asked him a few weeks earlier, he would have laughed at the idea. Dating was the last thing on his mind. Life already felt heavy enough with work, family pressure, and the quiet fear that he was falling behind everyone else's age. He liked his routines. He liked knowing what to expect. And most of all, he liked staying in control of his own choices. That control slipped away on an ordinary afternoon. It started with a phone call. A familiar voice on the other end sounded too cheerful, too eager. He was told he was meeting someone for coffee. Nothing serious, just a simple introduction. No pressure, no expectations. He agreed, mostly to avoid another long argument. He told himself he could leave whenever he wanted. That was the first lie he believed. The cafe was small and bright, filled with soft noise and warm light. He arrived early and chose a seat near the window. When she walked in, he noticed her right away, not because she stood out, but because she moved slowly, carefully, as if every step required thought. One side of her body didn't respond the way the other did. Her arm rested close to her body. Her leg dragged just slightly behind. He froze. No one had told him this. His chest tightened, and his mind rushed ahead of his heart. Confusion came first, then shock, and behind both of them, something darker, anger mixed with fear. He stood halfway, unsure whether to greet her or pretend he hadn't seen her yet. She smiled when their eyes met. It was a gentle smile, practiced but real, not the kind that asked for anything. They sat down together. The conversation was awkward at first. He struggled to focus on her words because his mind kept circling the same thought. Why wasn't I told? He felt trapped, as if leaving would make him look cruel, and staying would make him a liar. She spoke calmly. She asked simple questions. She listened carefully. When she laughed, she leaned forward a little, like she didn't want to miss a single moment. There was no sign of self-pity in her voice. No apology for who she was. That made it worse. After the coffee ended, he was given another gentle push to see her again. He wanted to say no. He almost did. But the image of her quiet smile stopped him. He agreed, telling himself it was just kindness. Nothing more. That was the second lie. Over the next few weeks, they met often. Short walks. Quiet meals. Long conversations that felt lighter than he expected. He noticed things he hadn't at first. How she planned her movements carefully, but never complained. How she laughed at herself when things went wrong. How she remembered small details about him that even close friends forgot. Still, something stood between them. Pity. He hated admitting it, even to himself. He told himself he was being patient, understanding, but deep down, he knew the truth. He was staying because leaving felt wrong, not because staying felt right. He felt watched, not by her, but by the world, by invisible eyes that would judge him if he walked away. He imagined whispers, imagined being labeled heartless. The fear of that judgment kept him rooted in place. At night, guilt crept in quietly. He questioned his own motives. Was he being kind, or was he being dishonest? Every smile he gave her felt forced. Every promise felt heavier than the last. She noticed the distance. She always did. There were moments when she would stop talking and look at him. Really look at him, as if trying to understand something unspoken. When their eyes met, he would glance away. He became careful with his words, choosing safety over honesty. One evening, they sat together in a quiet room, the kind of silence that presses against your chest. Outside, the world moved on like nothing was wrong. Inside, everything felt unsteady. She shifted slightly, adjusting her posture. He instinctively leaned forward to help, then stopped himself. He didn't want to offend her. He didn't want to remind her or himself of the difference between them. That difference filled the room anyway. He was tired. Tired of pretending. Tired of carrying a role he never chose. His mind replayed the same thought again and again. I can't do this forever. She spoke first. Her voice was soft, but steady. You've been far away lately. He didn't answer. She took a breath, as if choosing her words carefully. You don't look at me the same anymore. The truth sat on his tongue, heavy and sharp. He wanted to tell her everything. About the lie. About the pressure. About the fear that this relationship was built on something false. But he stayed silent. Silence was easier. She nodded slowly, as if his quiet confirmed what she already knew. For a moment, she looked down at her hands. When she looked up again, there was no anger in her eyes. Only understanding that hurt the most. "I need to say something," she said. He felt his heart beat faster. Part of him hoped she would end it for him, that she would make the decision he was too afraid to make. Her voice dropped to almost a whisper. "You don't have to stay. If this is just pity." The words landed between them, heavy and still. He opened his mouth, but nothing came out. The room felt smaller. The air felt thicker. In that moment, he realized she had seen through him from the very beginning. She had known why he stayed. She had known what he was afraid to admit. And she gave him an exit. Not with anger. Not with blame. With dignity. He sat there, frozen, staring at the floor. His chest tight with emotions he didn't know how to name. Shame, relief, fear, and something else. Something uncomfortable and new. Respect, for the first time. He wasn't thinking about what others would say. He wasn't thinking about how he looked. He was thinking about her, about the strength it took to speak those words, about how much courage it took to risk being left behind. The silence stretched on, and that's where part one ends, with him sitting there, facing a truth he could no longer escape, knowing that whatever he chose next would change both of them forever. He sat there long after her words faded into the quiet. "You don't have to stay. If this is just pity," they didn't sound angry. They didn't sound sad. They sounded honest. That honesty pressed against him harder than any accusation ever could. He felt exposed, like someone had gently lifted a curtain he'd been hiding behind. He finally looked up at her. She wasn't watching him to see what he would choose. She wasn't waiting for comfort or reassurance. She was simply there, calm and still, giving him space. That alone confused him. Most people would demand answers. She offered freedom. "I didn't mean to hurt you," he said at last. His voice felt smaller than usual. "I know," she replied. That was it. No long speech. No blame. Just those two words. They sat together for a while after that, not speaking, not touching. Just sharing the same quiet. Outside, the sky slowly changed color. He noticed it for the first time. How the light softened before evening. How everything slowed down when he finally stood to leave. His legs felt weak. At the door, he turned back. She was still sitting there, hands folded, eyes steady. "I need time," he said. She nodded. "Take it." He walked away, feeling heavier than before but also clearer. For the first time since they met, he wasn't pretending. He wasn't performing kindness. He was facing himself. That night, sleep didn't come easily. His mind replayed moments he had ignored. Her quiet patience when plans changed. The way she encouraged him when he spoke about his worries. How she never asked for help unless she truly needed it. How she never used her condition to gain. Sympathy, he realized something that made his chest tighten. She had never asked him to stay. Not once. The next few days were uncomfortable. He avoided messages. Not because he didn't care, but because he didn't know how to care honestly. He spoke to no one about it. Not friends. Not family. This was something he had to understand on his own. One afternoon, he found himself standing outside a small park they had visited before. He hadn't planned to go there. His feet had simply carried him. He sat on a bench and watched people pass by. Couples, families, individuals. Lost in thought, he noticed how easily he judged from the outside. How quickly he labeled people without knowing their stories. He wondered how many times others had done the same to her. And to him, he thought about the lie that had started it all. How angry he had been at being tricked. But beneath that anger was something else. Fear. Fear of being seen. Fear of committing to something that didn't fit the picture he had in his head of how life should look. He had mistaken that fear for pity when he finally reached out to her again. His message was simple, honest, no excuses. "Can we talk?" She replied a few minutes later, "Yes."
Oh, yes.
They met in the same quiet place as before. He arrived early again. This time, not because he was nervous, but because he wanted to be present. When she arrived, moving at her steady pace, he stood fully. He didn't rush to help. He let her move as she chose. That small moment mattered. They sat across from each other. The air felt different now, less tense, more open. "I've been thinking," he began, "about why I stayed and why I wanted to leave." She listened without interrupting. "I thought I was doing you a favor," he admitted. "But that wasn't fair. To you or to me." Her expression didn't change, but her eyes softened. "I was scared," he continued, "not of you, of myself, of what loving you would say about me, about the life I thought I was supposed to have." That was the first time he had said it out loud. She took a slow breath. "I never wanted to be someone's lesson," she said quietly, "or someone's good deed." "I know," he replied, "and I don't want that either." Silence followed, but it wasn't heavy. It felt like a pause in music, not the end of it. "I don't know where this will go," he said, "but I know this side don't want to stay because of pity, and I don't want to leave because of fear." She studied him for a long moment. Then she smiled. Not the polite smile from their first meeting. A real one, a relieved one. "Then we can start from here," she said. They did not rush into anything after that. They moved slowly, carefully. Some days were easy. Others were not. There were moments when his old fears tried to return. Moments when he worried about the future, about challenges he had never imagined before. But now, when those thoughts came, he talked about them, and she listened. Just as she always had, he also learned to listen in new ways. Not just to her words, but to her silences, to what she carried quietly, to the strength it took to move through a world that often underestimated her. He saw how strangers spoke to her, not with cruelty, but with lowered expectations. How they spoke around her instead of to her. He saw it now, and it bothered him in a way it hadn't before. One evening, as they walked slowly through a familiar street, she stopped to rest. He stood beside her, not in front. He didn't offer help right away. He waited. "Thank you," she said after a moment, noticing. "For what?" "For seeing me," she replied. Those words stayed with him. Love didn't arrive suddenly. It grew quietly in shared routines and small choices. In honesty, in respect, in moments when he chose to stay, not because he felt trapped, but because he felt connected. One night, months later, they sat together watching the city lights flicker on. She leaned back, tired but peaceful. "You know," she said, "I meant what I said that day. You really didn't have to stay." "I know," he replied, "but I wanted to." She turned to him then, and in her eyes, he saw no doubt, only trust. He understood something important in that moment. Love wasn't about saving someone. It wasn't about being strong for another person. It was about standing beside them without trying to change who they were. Pity had kept him. Distant respect brought him close. And that whisper, the one that gave him permission to leave, was the very thing that taught him how to stay. The story doesn't end with perfection. Life never does. There were still hard days ahead. But now they faced them honestly, together as equals. And for him, that made all the difference.